I quite like the point about moving around. I think when you stay in one place, it gets a bit boring. So I'm going to try and move around. There are a bunch of chairs here, but I'll just move in front of them. Hello, I'm Jasmine, and I'm here to talk about something you may never have heard of, you might be intrigued by, you might be confused by, you might be very angry at it. You can be all of those things and more. I think that's very much part of what I'm going to be talking about and how we approach it and how we interact with it. I'm coming to talk to you about queering, but I'm also coming to talk to you about interdisciplinary learning, about intersectional learning, multidisciplinary understanding, reimagining, and also a bit about me, because actually the reason I'm here on stage talking to you and the reason I do any of the work that I do is because of what I'm going to be talking about, and the only reason I've been able to get here is because of that. So I think if we move to the first slide, or am I supposed to do that myself? I'm supposed to do that myself. Been watching everyone do it, but I've been like, oh my God, how are they doing that? How are they communicating so well? So this is the title. Now, queering is very interesting, I think, because it's thrown about a lot, and then it's also thrown about not at all. I think before I came to this, people were questioning the usage of it. They were asking me, what are you going to talk about? What does that mean? And I think that's such a good question, because it should be asked again and again and again. What does it mean? With everything that we've talked about over this whole conference, I've been here since a bit in the morning, and I've heard lots of people speak about lots of different things across conservation, and I've seen posters, and it's been really amazing. And something that comes to mind is questioning, constant questioning of what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you are doing it, and where you're going with it. Because that's a big part of today, isn't it? Why are we here? Why are we here in the place we are in with conservation, with society, with management, with ecosystems and ecology, and where do we go with it? This is something I made, and it looks a bit scary, but it's okay, don't worry. I won't be on it for too long, but I'll come back to it maybe. I decided to start not with queering, but with regenerative, because I've said it's a regenerative pathway within nature. And I went to a retreat a few months ago, and it was held by an organization called Unorthodox. I'm advisor for Unorthodox, and Unorthodox is an organization that deals with regenerative pathways within natural systems. How do you achieve regeneration within the societies we exist in? Because we are in a place where we seem to have ground to a halt and also we're falling down. A lot of things are crumbling, they are falling apart, and that means support and structures of support for people and wildlife, they are falling apart. So how do you build them to be regenerative? We took issue almost immediately with the fact that there is a few not very clear definitions of what regeneration is. And that comes in when you're talking about restoration, when you're talking about rewilding, which I've also worked in. You have to ask yourselves, what does it mean to regenerate? What does it mean to put something in place that regeneration occurs? And I've put a few of the things here that might lead you down some rabbit holes when you're thinking about restoration, when you're thinking about regeneration. Because what we mostly discussed on that retreat was the fact that ecosystems do regenerate naturally, whatever that means. Societies regenerate. There is an act of regeneration that occurs within most ecosystems. Therefore, if it's occurring all of the time, and we find this with marine ecosystems, with inland ecosystems, with human ecosystems, if they are regenerating all of the time, why on earth are they not regenerating now? Well, that must mean that there are things holding them back. There are choke holders, and we call them choke holders. There are choke holders to the regenerative systems that are occurring. Therefore, what should we be doing? Maybe we should be asking ourselves, who are and what are those choke holders? What are the things that are holding the ecosystems from regenerating? What are the things that are stopping them from moving forwards, outwards, backwards, wherever they're going, in whatever way they've been occurring for many, many thousands of years? What are those choke holders? And that's where some of these other words come into it. Decolonization, system or systemic toxicity, inclusion, diversity. Those are some other words that are thrown about a lot. And you may have heard of EDI. You may have heard of diversity and inclusion. You may have heard of things that are put in place in order to make spaces more comfortable for other folks, nationalities, perspectives. What does that mean? What does it actually mean? Because from my point of view, as someone who is Pakistani, Muslim, someone who's queer, all of these different things, I move into these spaces and I kind of start to understand that you may have addressed some of the observable differences between the communities, but actually, there are systemic and foundational issues here that are not being addressed. And to me, that means that you haven't really addressed the issue of what inclusion means. And that links directly back to queering and restoration of ecosystems, because when you start to see where it is that systems are falling apart and where they are being stopped from moving forward, you can then figure out how to dismantle those chokeholders within those systems, and you can allow regeneration to occur and to move forward. And we've heard a lot about how social systems and human societies are held within nature and ecology, and it's not very well. Because actually, a lot of the time when people are talking about ecological policy, they do forget that humans are part of nature, and that human systems and the way we run things and the way we move and the way we exploit, they are part and parcel of natural history and ecology and all of the other things we like to talk about. They are very much embodied within each other. So queering, and I'm running out of time, and I knew I would because it's such a massive subject, but queering itself I view as a mechanism of dismantling. It is a mechanism by which you can go, these are othered folk within these systems. These are alternative mechanisms of existence. These are other ways of thinking or moving forward. For example, an indigenous standpoint within ecology, within nature, within conservation. A decolonial standpoint, where you look at what the main oppressors are within a system, what economic structures they're using to carry out whatever they're doing. What exploitation are they carrying out? You start to ask those questions and you start to dismantle whereabouts they are happening. And that happens through guidance, I think. Because if you are within a system and it is maybe an exploitative system, an over-exploitative system, and it has certain access points to the resources it uses to exploit, if you are mainly curated to those perspectives, you are benefiting a lot from it. Therefore, you are quite unable to see, from my point of view, the alternative perspectives that might help you to dismantle those oppressions within that system. Does that make sense? So from my point of view, it would seem, and from the people I've talked to, and from what I study, from what I do, it would seem that we are in need of guidance from othered systems, from othered folk. We are in need of being moved in directions. And if we primarily hold resource, if we primarily hold economic resource, education resource, experience within those industries, we are still part of the solution. But we do need to be more humble to the fact that we might not be able to see the ultimate solutions to the dismantling of these oppressions unless we are guided from those spaces of alternative perspective. And that is kind of what queering is. To me, it seems to be a mechanism of regeneration. It seems to be a way of holding all of these different variables and how to continue the re-questioning and the reimagination, especially of conservation. And we're probably not going to be able to do a lot on these other slides, but they're very funny. So that's a talk that I do, which is called Penguins Aren't Gay. And it's not to say that penguins aren't gay or that they are gay or whatever gay means. It's just to say that when you question a system of normality, and in this case it might be a system of identification, you start to understand where your fact comes from. You start to understand how you've developed conservation practice. Does it come from a colonial model where predator-prey identity and interaction is based on a human idea of what predator and prey are, of what crops are, of what the exploitation of resource is. It starts you on that questioning journey. It allows you to dismantle and deconstruct. And I think that's really important because at the end of the day, we are still in linear systems of hierarchy that very much are leaning on colonial and capitalistic ideas of what conservation and nature management is. There isn't really a system of care for non-human organisms and human organisms in place in a lot of ecological and conservation policy. I've completely run out of time, I'm really sorry. But some of these words are really interesting and very important. And that's a bit more about where this all comes from and where queerness and queering comes from, and the idea that queering itself is not really a thing, but it's also a way of dismantling, and therefore it can fall apart at the end, and that's fine, as do other policies and conservation processes. These need to have an aspect of, we don't need to be here on this one thing all the time for the future. We can reconsider it. It can break down and fall apart. I'm so sorry. But with this, what I just want to make a very small point about before I run away is that what we are looking at is the ocean, the largest ecosystem on the planet, something that connects ecosystems and people across landscapes, across barriers, across thoughts and perspectives. You are looking at one of the most fluid ecosystems, the most fluid ecosystem in many aspects on the planet, and it affects everything else. You have to have a reimaginative understanding of it. You have to question the processes that go into it, whether that be socioeconomic, whether that be ecological based, whoever's questioning it, you need to be able to do that. And that's why I think queering is very important for ocean ecosystems, probably more so than any other ecosystem. And I love bugs most, so that's me. That's what I do. I advise a lot. I talk too much, and I write a fair bit. I'm writing a book as well, actually. It's been really lovely, and I'll run away now. Thank you.